Stephen Poloz was the governor of the Bank of Canada and is now a special advisor at Osler, Hoskin and Harcourt. Hi, Mr. Poloz. Pleasure to welcome you back to studio.
Great to be here.
I appreciate you making the time.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you, it's been a few months since we spoke, since the tariffs were in full effect. If you were to, write a story about the economic impact of the tariffs thus far, what would the headline read?
Well, it's like we talked about last time. We expected investment, there would be a freeze. There has been. You can really see that in the numbers. And there's inflation bubbling here, percolating maybe is a better term. It's showing up, which is what we discussed. Maybe a little slower than we might have expected, but that's because a lot of companies tried to swallow the first round impact, I think maybe hoping it would get negotiated away. So what we've got now is two economies actually that are sliding, let's say not in recession probably, but sliding in that direction. The trajectory is not a positive one for both the U.S. and Canada. And so as a result, we're seeing it, labor market numbers, we're seeing it in consumption. The one good bright light I would say is Canada consumption numbers, because at the time we couldn't estimate how much of effect this would be. The Canadians would switch to buying Canadian, and we'd stay home for holidays. And when you go around Canada, you can see they really did. And so as a result, retail sales have stayed pretty buoyant. And I think none of us could have estimated that, but it's one positive in there, at least from a macro standpoint. It's not a positive what's driving it, but at least that's holding up the numbers a little bit. But fundamentally, the backbone of the economy is weakening.
Since we last spoke, what did happen is kind of, I think, an acknowledgement that there won't necessarily be some sort of formalized trade agreement before we start renegotiating CUSMA, that we will be in this period of relative uncertainty until those negotiations take place. Is there anything, therefore, that can course correct the trajectory, or will things get darker, to be blunt?
Well, potentially. The government is making several moves, prominent among them, the extra spending on defense. Government procurement policies, those kinds of things can make a noticeable difference. It depends on how quickly they actually land, and I can't predict that. But usually when the labor market data start to turn sour, there's a momentum there. The first part of it is we stop hiring. It's before the layoffs actually start. We have quite a few layoffs in both Canada and the U.S., but they've stopped hiring, for several months now, and Canada we actually have negatives. And by the way, the unemployment for Canada is up 2.4% from the low, which is quite a bit. If you look at youth from 15 to 24, it's up 4 points. Actually, it's double the unemployment rate, the overall unemployment rate, 14.5%.
How worrying is that?
Well, that's quite worrying. That's the same generation of folks that were hit by the COVID. How COVID affected their educational experience and so on. And here they finally get in the job market, and it's dried up pretty badly. And I'm not sure we can put that all against tariffs. Actually, I think we may be beginning to see the first concrete evidence that AI is having a wider impact on labor markets. It's going to happen at that entry level. That's where we're going to see it first. It cuts across a lot of professions.
So that is among the issues, as you point out, that have become evident. We also last spoke about sort of what your view of the role of government in trying to catalyze investment against the backdrop of everything, right? Trying to catalyze the growth of the economy, or whatever they can do with the economy against the backdrop of what you just laid out, both from the labor market and the tariff perspective. Based on what you've seen so far, is that happening to the degree it should? In what should the budget do in that regard?
Sure. Well, there's certainly, I'll call it chatter about it, both from people I talk to in the investment business, and the Prime Minister himself has used the term catalyze quite often in recent months. And so in that sense, I think the idea is there, certainly for large things, the infrastructure kinds of things. The big projects that they're talking about would require probably a mix of public and private money, and mostly private. But that's the sense in which the public money is catalytic. It may be structured in a form that it makes it, enhances the returns for the private sector players and stuff as a mitigant against risk, that kind of structure, which is what we talked about, I guess, close to a year ago, which was in the full economic statement, some ideas around that. So I'm, at the moment, I don't know what's going on for the budget, but I do think investment is the most important thing that needs to pick up. We need to catalyze more investment, both in infrastructure and basic investment. And that's where our next leg in productivity can come from. Basically, we need to embrace this fourth industrial revolution rather than taking our time about it. An early start, the benefits will come faster.
And what about what will, I imagine, has already become, but will be even more of a political debate? I won't ask you about the politics, but in particular, how much to spend, how much not to spend. Is this austerity? Is this not? If someone asked your advice on what this budget should look like in that regard, how aware should the federal government be of the amount it spends?
Yeah, so from what I can see, it looks like there's going to be a careful job of distinguishing between true investment, which then could be classified as investment, as opposed to operating spending. And investment is just like in a company, if it's going to generate a return, then that's something you can classify as an actual investment. And that could be held in effect off balance sheet, and it still gets financed the usual way.
Right.
However, it's backed up with, because it's growth generating, definitely going to create more revenues for the government as it generates economic growth in the economy. So just like with a company, an investment will pay for itself if you've structured everything right. So that's what I'm imagining as that partition between things. And then operationally, there's this plan to balance all of that, and that would require a degree of austerity on those kinds of routine items of government. How big does this all have to be, Vashi?
That's what I want to ask you.
Yes, well, I honestly don't know, but we think we know that the Trump tariffs, the new regime we're moving into, is probably going to reduce the size of major economies by around 2 percentage points, and then reduce economic growth maybe 0.5 point from then on. This is not trivial. But Canada has many opportunities to boost its economy by 2 or 3% in level terms, and if you're embracing more investment, that'll also boost the growth trend line. So I just think that the scale is such that we do have plenty of opportunities to actually offset what we're about to endure.
One final question for you, and it's about the United States economy, because in a couple of instances you've referenced how
Sure.
the impacts are starting to be felt there.
Yes.
They're still at a scale not as pronounced as they are here or in some other countries. And the argument that keeps getting the pushback from the White House is like, look, there's still lots of good things. The economy is growing, et cetera, et cetera. Do you expect there to be a very pronounced impact on the American economy vis-a-vis this tariff policy, and how soon do you expect that to be there?
Oh yes, I think we're seeing it now. We're seeing it in the labor market numbers. We see lots of uncertainty affecting people. So the housing market's doing poorly, and the labor market's doing poorly. Like here in Canada, consumption spending seems to be holding up, not too badly, but that would be the next thing. And so I think we'll see it, and we all dreamed that perhaps that would cause the administration to maybe shift the ground a little bit. But I'm less convinced of that now. And so we just sort of blame it on the Fed or blame it on something else. So I think as businesses here, we need to get ready for this new structure or new world that is facing us. And it won't be as robust or as efficient or as quickly growing as the old world. So we need to be dealing with that as the cards that are being dealt to us.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note, Mr. Poloz. Appreciate your analysis as always. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.